Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I apologize about last week and not being able to hold the presentation, but we're glad that you're here tonight and are able to make it, and we'll try to make it worth your while. My name is Jeremy Derryberry. I'm one of the directors here at Everest. With me tonight is Linda Hitchcock, our college admissions counselor. And tonight we want to talk to you about how do you figure out how much a college is going to cost. Um, it's a topic near and dear to my heart because I have a senior who's just gotten her actual cost letter from her university today. So I'm feeling that pain myself. Um, but 2 years ago, I really had no idea how to figure out this information. And we thought it's something that we should really share with you because it's a question that we get a lot from parents. So tonight, Linda's going to speak for probably about half an hour, 45 minutes on our presentation, and then we'll do a Q&A afterwards. If there's any questions that we didn't cover during the presentation that you want to bring up, feel free to ask them then or put them in the chat in the meantime. And with that, I'll move on to Linda.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm the one that had to cancel at the last minute last week, so I apologize. Um, but anyway, we appreciate you joining us, and I hope that the information that we give you is helpful. And we will, like Jeremy said, we will answer any questions that you have. So, just a little bit about me. I have been a college counselor for over 30 years. I have seen financial aid, financial situations with colleges change drastically over the few years. And every couple years, they seem to roll out with something new. And this year was no exception. So, they went the FAFSA form, which stands for Federal um, Free Application Federal Student Aid, which is something you will want to know. It came out with a brand new form and a brand new, I guess, configuration of how they're going to look at families for financial aid. And that was very different. Normally, FAFSA comes out October 1st. So parents have an idea of how much colleges are going to cost before the actual students commit to a college on May 1st. And this year, the letters and the financial aids are coming out literally, as Jeremy told you yesterday. I've still had some families that have not heard at all, and they need to make a decision about colleges. So, for those of you that have a child graduating in 2025 and will be heading off to school in the fall of 2025, this will all be worked out, and you're probably not going to have a lot of problems. And anybody that has a child in 2026 or 2027, again, this will be done. So you've avoided one of the factors this year of getting the FAFSA out. So, as I said, you'll get to hear a lot of different terms tonight, and I will try to explain them. And we will also send out some resources for you after the presentation. So, the very first thing that I sit down when I talk to a family regarding colleges is, and I talked with students, is cost. And I always tell my families, you must have the money talk with your child before they even apply to schools. So when you are thinking about, expectations and what colleges really cost and what your expectations are and what your child's expectations are, sometimes very, very different. When you're looking at schools, it's a good idea to know how much you're willing to spend or how much your child is willing to take out a loan for if they need to. And that's important. And the reason that it's so important is because I, in the past, have had so many students that have applied to and spent time, effort, financial money filling out all the forms and the application fees and sending all their test scores. By the time that was done, we're talking $100 per application, plus the time and energy for students to write those essays and get their application in, ask for the letters of recommendation, everything involved. And once students received an answer and it was a yes and it's their dream school and the parent said, I'm sorry, I can't afford it, based on how much it costs, it's just a huge disappointment to the child. So, and to the parents who say, well, I'm really sorry, I can't fulfill your dream. So before they start applying to these schools, it's a great idea to have that financial talk with them at the very beginning. And as our slide says, don't dream shop, because again, it the money is definitely part of the decision that you're going to make. Um, there are some families that don't ever have to worry about, and that's wonderful. But I would say that sometimes that's not an option. And if money is no no problem, then you probably don't have to listen to that part of it. Your child can apply anywhere, but it's a really good idea to be at a school that and choose the schools that you can afford. And we will go over how to learn that this evening. Okay. Um, so affordability, and let's move on and we'll tell you what, how to get to that affordability. Okay. So when you go to visit a school or when your child is looking at a school, you as a parent always want to go to the financial aid page. The financial aid page is will give the cost of tuition. It will give, most of the time, it will give room and board, and it will give you an estimate because, again, based on when you're looking at that information, it could be based on 2024 cost and not 2025 or 2026. So you want to make sure that you find out from them if what kind of price increase they're going to have or what their estimated increase will be, because that's going to be important for you, because it could drastically change by the time you look at a page that says what the cost is, and then by the time your child is actually committing, which is a year from now. So, but list price is normally tuition, room and board, and fees. And here's the other thing you need to understand about fees. Many schools, public schools, do not publish their fees. They will give you an estimate about them, but if you look, they will not include fees. They will include books. However, I found that when I was doing books with my daughter, the price that the school, I guess, recommended or put into the financial equation was a lot more than what we actually paid for books. You do need to think about that, but I feel that the fees for some schools are very important to understand, because these fees can be $3,000 to $5,000. A lot of private schools will factor those fees in with the tuition and room and board. So when you're visiting a school or your child is talking to the school, you need to ask about additional fees. Okay. There's athletic fees and parking fees, and just depends upon the school. So again, those are the three things you want to look at: tuition, room and board, and fees. That's the list price. So gift aid, which means you never ever have to pay it back, are grants and scholarships. Many schools, public schools, have grants. Some private schools also have grants, but you have to ask. So there's certain terms that you need to know. And one is, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. One is called need-based aid, and need-based aid is based on income and how much money you have put away for your child to go to school, but it's based on income, parent income, student income. So if they tell you that they are a need-based school, that means they do not give out merit scholarships. So that's something to understand right away, right up front, that if they say they're need-based, there are no academic scholarships. There could be other scholarships that the students can apply for. So, and many of them have private scholarships or scholarships through the school, made by a donor. So, but sometimes they need an extra essay or an interview, or sometimes the student is nominated by the school, by their high school for these scholarships. So, again, something to ask, but that's very important if they tell you that they are based on need. um, Grants will come into that need. So if your family is in need of financial aid need, then that's when a private school or any type of public school will give a grant, and a grant doesn't have to be paid back. So again, very important questions to ask when you're visiting a school. If you've already visited a school over spring break and you didn't have a chance to ask that, then go back, and you as a parent can contact the financial aid office anytime you want. They are happy to answer your questions. So all you have to do is email them or get on the phone and call and say, I'd like to get this information before my child, spends hours applying to your school. They will tell you, but again, call the financial aid office. Okay. So when you look at that list price and you subtract the grants and the scholarships, you actually get a net price calculator. And that means your net price family pays with cash, your 529 loans, any type of, uh, again, my mind is lost here, but any type of uh, family money that they've inherited, or not grants, and I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought, but um, trust, that's what I mean, any types of trust that they've been left, that gives you what that net price is going to be, amount of what you need to pay. So every college has something called a net price calculator. However, this net price calculator was hopefully going to be correct for the parents that are looking at college for 2025. I will tell you it was not for 2024. So, once again, a question to ask the college: is your net price calculator correct? Are the figures in there correct? But that is a good place to start. Is every college has one. If you go to the search bar at the top and just type in net price calculator, it will come up, and then you complete the information. It will ask for the parents' financials. You look at your income taxes that you filed, and it will give you all of that information. You'll look at your students' financials. So if they have money in their name, then that's going to be part of the equation. You also put in their academics. So based on a GPA that you possibly have right now, and again, that is a cumulative GPA, not a GPA on a report card. So you want to talk to your high school counselor, your child's high school counselor, and say, I want a cumulative GPA. Because that's going to take in consideration if they took classes in eighth grade, seventh or eighth grade, that could be on their transcript, and ninth and 10th. And of course, if you're looking for juniors, they're not finished yet. But also their test scores and extracurriculars. Some schools will ask about extracurriculars, some will not on their net price calculator. So again, every school is going to be a little different with that net price calculator. However, that is where you're going to get the best information that you could possibly get. So keep in mind that, again, like the slide says, there is everybody's a little different. Every school's a little different in how they do it. Some just put up a generic form. Some are very detailed. So it truly is school based. And again, another question that you should be asking when you go to visit a school. And I know that students will never ask that. So again, this is a question that parents should have, especially if this is a concern for you and how much school is going to actually cost. So again, some schools, and I read an article yesterday that Michigan, for out-of-state students this past year, for students that are going in for fall of 2024, their estimate is over $75,000 a year. And that is room, board, tuition, and um, fees. So quite a bit of money there, and that's for out of state. So again, every college is going to be different. And again, that was for 2024. So just something to ask every school. All right, let's talk about how colleges determine that need. So again, they look at the cost. Um, they're counting in books and supplies, transportations, that types of things that you need to factor in. So if we live in the Washington D.C. area and your child's going to go to college in California, you're going to want to factor in that transportation cost as well. So again, things that you may not think about right now, but could cost you quite a bit over the 4 years that your child's going to be in school. Books and supplies really do vary. They really do. Transportation again varies, but the room and the board and the uh, fees, and if your child's going to join a sorority or a fraternity, you need to look at how much that is. There's a lot of fees that you may not understand what they are. You can look at certain factors that are on their website, but they don't include everything. So just remember to add some extra money in your head or on your financial page just to cover all those extra things that do happen. So that's the cost of attendance. Um, Instead of calling it, they used to have a term. So if you had a child that was in school, in college before 2024, they would call it an estimated financial need, an EFC. Now it is called a student aid index. And what that means is basically the same thing. It's going to be an estimated amount of what you're going to pay. So the federal formula that you will receive based on that FAFSA is determined by every school a little bit different. So the index number used by the FAFSA offices are not a guaranteed amount because every school could be very different. So the input that the school has. And again, all these things come down to what the school is that you're applying to and how the school is looking at that information. But it's the student aid indexer is based on the parent's income and the child's income. And we'll go through a little bit of the differences of what used to be counted and now is counted. There are some pros and the cons, but basically that's what you need to know if your child's going into college in 2025 and after. It is now called a student aid index. So you're going to see SAI as a term that is going to be present in a lot of presentations when you go to colleges and they talk to you about financial aid or scholarships or grants. Okay. All right. So again, it was called the FAFSA is free application for federal student aid. The FAFSA will include work study that your child doesn't have to pay back, a grant, and a federal loan. So when you fill out this FAFSA, this is going to, again, a grant is going to be based on your income. The federal loans are aid, and that's what aid is. It's either a grant or a loan. So you need to understand that federal aid may not be a scholarship. Federal financial aid is aid from the government with student loans or a grant, and grants are based on income. Work study is also based on income, but I will tell you that the majority of the time, the schools will offer work study to almost every student that fills out a FAFSA form. So if you don't fill out a FAFSA form, the chances are your child will not get offered any type of work study. So I know that really paid off for my daughter, and it made her work a little harder to understand that she was working for something, and that part of the money that she was working for was paying for her college education. So I found it helpful. Some parents don't, but it's there. But if you don't fill out the FAFSA, you won't get that. So again, this FAFSA is used to generate this student index, and it's used by every school, every lender, every scholarship that your child applies to. They will always ask you for a FAFSA form to be completed. And then we'll give you some of these major updates for 2023-24. There is another form that is required by, yes, about 400 colleges. I think you're going to see an increase. At least that's what I've been told. Probably about 425 schools in 2025 are going to be using the CSS profile. So this is a form that is generated by College Board, and it is based on families with an adjusted gross income of more than $100,000. So there is, I'm sorry, there is a fee of $25 fee for families with an adjusted gross income. However, if you don't make that money, then you don't have to pay the fee. But this form is provided by College Board, and it is a requirement for many different schools. You don't have a choice. If you want your child to have any type of scholarship or any type of grant aid or financial loan, you must fill out this CSS form. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. If you don't complete the CSS form, you're going to get a bill for full payment. So if you applied to Michigan, which is a school that requires the CSS profile, you didn't fill out the CSS or the FAFSA, you're going to get a bill for $78,000. So, and it's due like right away. So just understand that the CSS form is critical for many, many schools. And there are a lot of them. So please make sure you do that. Jeremy, I'll cut in here and ask, I know you filled out the CSS form. It is a form that probably takes at least an hour, maybe even an hour and a half. Am I right?
It took us about 2 hours to get through everything. To compare it to the FAFSA at this point, the new version really pulls most of your information from your 1040 filing with the IRS. You're really just filling in a couple of other boxes after that. The CSS is really asking you for every detail of your financial life. So if you have a very complicated financial picture, lots of assets, lots of stuff, maybe a business, trusts, other
It
things,
takes,
it's going to ask you about every single thing. So it's just another level of preparation that you have to have above what the FAFSA is requiring from you. The FAFSA, really all I needed to do was have my 1040 information, which is already filed, and then to have my bank statements and to have our child's bank statements and that kind of stuff. The really simple stuff. That was very quick. The CSS really it was a multi-day thing to get through it all.
yeah, it really is. I think it has over 300 questions. So
The other
it,
thing
it
I would
definitely,
just say about the CSS is that the schools that use the CSS are the schools where you are going to be paying the most money. So if
right.
the price tag is
That's for
high, they are probably asking for the CSS, and you definitely are going to want to fill it out because you're not
yeah,
going to be able to afford the school otherwise. So that's just my
right.
2 cents.
Thank you, Jeremy. Absolutely. Because he went through this. His daughter is going to start college in fall of 2024. So, yes, I went through it a while ago, but the CSS form doesn't change. So, again, before you start looking at schools, look and see if they're on that CSS list, because just understand that that's part of this equation that's going to have to be completed. If your child applies early decision to any school, which most of them are going to be November 1st, that CSS profile has to be in by that deadline. So if your child's applying early decision November 1, that CSS form must accompany that application, or again, you will be offered nothing. So very important. I teach a summer application college class, and that's the first thing we talk about when a student does early decision. I sit down and have a one-on-one with conversation with the student, and I make sure they understand that, because it's a very important piece of the application process. Okay, we'll move on. And again, if you have questions about that, we'll answer them. So here are the changes. There are, again, as Jeremy said, it's a simplified form. It's come from 108 questions down to 36. It has a phenomenal tool that if you have submitted your income taxes for the previous year, you are able to go in and it automatically pulls that information. So it's very helpful. If you have not filed your taxes or filed an extension, it's very difficult to pull that information. However, the majority of people will not have that problem, but there are certain issues that you're not going to be able to pull it. So it reduces the number of income sources counted, and it simplifies the custodial parent determination. So if you're in a divorce situation, there's some good parts about it and some bad parts about it. Before, the parent who is filing the FAFSA form, their income was used, and that was the only income that was used. So if you had a child that previously, you had this situation, then it's changed. If you haven't, just ignore what I just said, because you don't have to worry about it. It does expend the Pell Grant. Let me explain to you what a Pell Grant is. The Pell Grant eligibility is based on income, and it is below a certain income that you make. It used to be $50,000 a year. I believe it's 65. Every year it changes a little bit. This past year it was like 58,000. So if you make less than 58,000, you're going to be eligible for a Pell Grant, a grant again that you don't pay back. And this past year the Pell Grants were $5,000 a year, so that you don't pay back. And of course, then you get offered the student loans. So again, different eligibility factors, and I'm sure it will change again, but it is based on income. All right, the rollout new application has been a disaster, not only for the parents, students, the colleges. The colleges have been left with trying to get out all of their information to parents, so they can make a financial decision by May 1st. Because again, your child has to commit to a school by May 1st. And as Jeremy said, they just heard back from the school that their daughter wants to go to yesterday, I believe Jeremy said. So that was the bad part. I can tell you for 2025, that will not happen, because the colleges are much more prepared. Government's more prepared. It won't happen again. So there's still no resolution about getting data, but I will tell you that it will get better, because there's a lot of people involved in this. I'm on in a lot of chat rooms and belong to a lot of associations, and this is a huge topic of conversation, and it has gone to presidents of colleges, and believe me, they are working on it. So I believe in 2025 this is not going to be a problem as it was this year. So that's the good part. Let's tell you about some of the changes that are going to happen. So, and again, if you've never done this in the past, you don't have anything to worry about. However, here are some of the things that need to look at. So, the expected family contribution clarifies the use. It reduces a number of income sources considered, especially non-taxed and pre-retirement contributions to employers. So, for example, when my daughter applied to colleges, this rule was not in effect. So they counted the money that based on my age, they counted the money that I had already had in a pension fund towards the money that I was able to pay for her education. So that really hurt us in that factor. However, one of the factors that did help me was my age. So that again, they've taken that off the table. So you don't have to worry about money that you've put into a 401 for your retirement or a pension plan. So that's really a good thing. And that really makes a difference in a lot of people's financial situation. Um, let's see, most students should get a lower index number versus a estimated family contribution because it has increased their access to the aid forms. So again, this student index is going to be a little bit better than an estimated family contribution. So, and then Pell Grant eligibility is expanded a higher amount. There's a wider range that can, how it can be negative to indicate extreme need. So I'll give you an example. Extreme need means that if you are taking care of an elderly adult and you have an income, that part of that income is helping to pay for a nursing home or their income or any of that, they're going to take that into consideration. So that's a good thing because that has never happened before. So, and again, if there is an extreme need of a situational, and again, every family is going to be a little different. So I don't want to give you an example and then have that be wrong. So, but that is something that you can explain to a college and contact them and say, this is part of my extreme need. And they will look at your whole financials. So they will ask you for proof for that extreme need and they will work with you. So that's a good thing because before they just took it on paper, how much you made, how much was in the bank, and that was it. So combinations and offers, your grandparents, that was another thing that they showed as an asset on for children, is if their grandparents had a 529 for them, they still counted that as income for the child. Now they don't. Am I right, Jeremy? I'm pretty sure I've done a lot of research on that. So I just want to make sure that I'm saying that correctly.
Yes, grandparents 529s are not counted.
Yes, which is a really good thing because a lot of grandparents have taken out 529s. And at the end of the day, it really didn't benefit their child or their grandchild, but now it will. So that's that. When I heard that one, that was really a good thing. Here's one of the things that's not so great. So let's say you have a child that's in college already, or you have a child that's in college in 2025, and then you're going to have one in 2026 or 2027. There used to be an advantage of having two children in college at the same time. They don't factor that in anymore. So, if you have twins or triplets going in at the same time, then that's going to be factored. But if you have two, back to back years, they're not going to take that into consideration. But when you have multiples, there's a way again in the need factor, they will put that in there. So that's also a good thing because that was never in there as well. So their allowances against assets have been reduced. So again, the financial, the pension area has definitely been a good thing that they're not counting that as an asset. They're not counting some of like a second property as an asset. Again, it's all going to depend upon how your 1040 reads. And that I can't determine or give you any financial advice. And that's one thing I wanted to say at the beginning. I am not a financial planner. If you ask me financial questions about should you put your money here or there, I am not the one to ask. So I can tell you the rules, how to fill out the forms, what's required from a college, but honestly, I'm not that. So you'd have to go get a good financial advisor or a CPA or somebody that knows that industry, because it's not me. Um, okay, so uh, so sorry. So there are again some really good factors in this, and you'll just need to look at the form. The form, from what I saw when I was doing my research, is not on the FAFSA website, a sample of the form, and that's because I think it's going to change a little bit. But by fall of 2020, yeah, fall of 2024, once they get back into the season and still students are applying, I think there will be a sample form that families will be able to see, and that you'll know what's on the form. Let's cross our fingers on that. So I wasn't able to find one, but I don't know if they're out there and I'm just looking at the wrong place. But I couldn't find a sample form of what the new FAFSA is. Um, Jeremy, do you have any resource for that?
I saw one before it was finalized, but I have not seen a standalone version since then. But I'll do some digging and we'll see if we can send something out.
No. Okay. All right. Okay. Um, let's move on and we can uh okay. So here's what they are going to use to get you a student index. All right. So they're going to use how many family members are in the family, the parent's marital status, your state of residence, your parents' income from 2023. And again, that's directly taken from the federal tax reform. Parent assets, as far as owned assets outside of retirement accounts, primary home, insurance policies, including checking, savings, CDs, brokerage accounts, 529 college plans, equity and value of additional properties. And again, I think that depends upon if the property is, like, if you've got a rental property and if it's making money or if it's not making money. I think that's factored into that. But again, that's factored on your 1040. So really, it's based on your 1040. The Your student's income. So here's the other thing that parents need to understand. If your child is making, and I believe I need to go back and double check this, but if your child is making under $8,000 a year, and they want to fill out the, federal, to get their federal income tax back, that's fine. However, that's an asset and that's going to be counted in the FAFSA. So one of those things you need to look at, is it worth it to put down what your child has made over the summer or a part-time job if they made under $8,000 and just they don't file a 1040? That's a choice that you should sit down and ask your child, because if they file a 1040, that is part of the financial aid, that student aid index. And it's going to say, well, if they work, then they have that money. That's an asset. So one of those things, again, I would be talking to a financial planner. I found that when my daughter worked, she made under $5,000 a year. For the amount of money that she paid into for federal income tax, what she was going to get back versus what it was going to mean for our FAFSA when we did it, it wasn't worth it. So she didn't file income taxes for that year, for those 4 years when she was in college, just because it would have factored into our FAFSA. So I'm just giving you my information. Again, not a financial planner, something to think about. Okay. If your child has, though, if your child has uh, trust funds and they're getting interest, then I believe that they do have to file federal income tax form. So if it's over a certain amount, so again, that's going to be used towards an asset. There it is. Yes. So any assets assessed at the student's assets are assessed at a higher rate That's why I always had the student asset, hopefully not filling out a financial form of, federal income tax form, because they their assets are counted as 20%, where a parent's is counted at 5 to 6%. So again, depending upon the school. So when you sit down to factor all this in, a really good thing to sit down and say, okay, well, here's what the estimate would be if my child filled out an income tax form. If they have to, that's a different story. But if they don't have to and they make under a certain amount, this is what it would be versus that would be. That I would be doing that calculation. And correct me, Jeremy, if I'm wrong, because again, it's been a little while since I personally had to fill out a FAFSA form. But from, again, all the research that I've been doing on my own, it hasn't changed that much. Am I right?
What hasn't changed? What they need to report?
About about students, about if you make under a certain amount, they don't have to fill in they don't have to file an income tax form.
I
They
actually
make
don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I think that's something to look at. So again, it just depends upon how much the income tax that a child doesn't have to file. So everybody's a little different. One of those things to look at. Okay. All right. How do colleges meet need? I kind of went through this before. They're going to offer scholarships and they're going to offer grants. They're going to offer work study and they're going to offer loans. Scholarships based depending upon the school. Some schools offer phenomenal scholarships based on a child's GPA, test scores, their extracurriculars, all of those wonderful things. Also, scholarships that they apply for separately that are through the college. Some of the colleges have phenomenal scholarships that are available. And when I work with a student, we always look at the school to say, okay, this school has this scholarship. Make sure that you apply for this. Or this school has, you need to be nominated. Make sure you go in and talk to your counselor about being nominated. So again, these are all scholarships that schools offer, but not every school. So a lot of the schools that use that CSS, like you're never going to see a scholarship from Harvard or Yale, those types of scholarships that are based on academics. So there could be other scholarships that they offer based on a sport, but I can't quote that because that's based between the coach and the athlete. Grants are, again, that you don't have to pay them back. And work study, you don't have to pay that back. Work study is rather helpful. I know when my daughter was offered work study, it took almost $8,000 off of her yearly tuition. It was quite a bit of money. Now, again, that could have been the school. So every school is going to be a little bit different than that. Loans are loans. You've got a Stafford loan from the government. It's capped out at a certain amount. You've got other loans from the government that again are tapped out, the highest you're going to get, and the schools will tell you what government loans are out there. You can also do a lot of research regarding government loans, but I would say that the majority of them are not going to be any over more than $5,000. You can take out a Parent Plus loan, and we'll go through some of these loans here in just a second. But again, they're student loans that are in the student's name, because then once they're over 18, those loans are in your child's name. If a Parent Plus loan, then that's in your name. But the kids need to understand that they sign those loan obligation pages for federal student loans, and they're responsible for them. So when they graduate, if they're taking out those loans and they graduate, they sometimes they can not have to pay the interest of that loan right away. But sometimes once that student graduates that year, that interest is tacked on, and it could add up to be quite a bit of money. And they can, your child could walk out of school with $30,000-$40,000 worth of loans. So that's an expense that your child is going to incur. It's going to be in their name, not yours. So very important to have your child understand, if they're signing for a loan, this loan has to be paid back. So just keep that in mind. All right, let's move to the next one. Okay. And so again, I'm not a financial planner, but these are the ways that a lot of families do pay for it. Some of them do use their retirement savings. I personally wouldn't suggest that, but some are able to do that. Home equity loans, if you have a home equity and you have equity in your home, you can take out a loan. Private loans, there's plenty of them out there. And once your child starts applying for colleges, they're going to get tons of information about private loans. And once you fill out that FAFSA form, you're going to start getting a lot of ads about private loans as well. The Parent Plus loans are government loans. And then you've got, United States government and the federal student loans. Work study, I went over. Cash flow is how much money you have in the bank, your savings, whatever your savings are, grants, and scholarships. So don't count on scholarships because, again, some schools don't offer them. Some schools offer a limited amount. You don't know if your child's going to qualify for them. So I would not count on them. Unfortunately, I've seen that happen in the past where parents are like, oh, no, they're going to get a scholarship. They're positive they're going to get a scholarship. And unfortunately, they don't. And that changes the dynamics of an entire application. So homework is extremely important when you start to do the college application process, whether it's right now for you have a student that's going to be a senior in the fall. This is important to start right now. If you've got a junior, next year is going to be a junior, I would also start looking at this, thinking about it, figuring out where your money is, where it's going to come from. Those are important factors. The other thing that I'm glad Jeremy included on here is using the college scorecard. So let's tell you what the college scorecard is. That is the rate of how many students graduate from that school in a matter of 4 years. So if the college scorecard is that, 50% of the students are not graduating in 4 years, that's an extra year that you need to understand that they're going to have to pay. So that scorecard is very important for you to look at now, because I will tell you that sometimes in larger schools, okay, those kids, it's hard to get the credits that they need in 4 years to graduate. Students that have an abundance amount of AP scores that they can use to go into college with, that the schools will accept. And again, you're talking about some of the very elite schools. They will only allow a certain amount of AP scores to be accepted. So don't count on them. If your child's got 10 AP scores and they're all fives and they want to go to Harvard, I will tell you right now, they won't count them all. So you can't count on that money if you feel that that's what you have. So you have to ask the school how many AP credits they will give or how many IB credits they will give. And that can reduce the amount of years your child could be in school. So if they give if your child has taken AP classes and has taken the exam and has gotten a 4 or 5, and the school would give them credit, sometimes students will walk into a college as a sophomore and be enough credits to come in as a sophomore and graduate in 4 years, or sometimes even graduate in 3. So again, it depends if your child is doing college in school. It depends upon where they're going. It depends upon what classes they've done. So that's a whole different question that I can help you with and explain that to you. But again, You cannot count on that until you contact the school. And I would definitely be using the college scorecard. All of that information is on the college website. You can also get it through the government sites to look up what a college scorecard is. And the slide says, very important, most families have multiple sources of income. So again, sit down with all those multiple sources, add them up, figure out how much exactly you have for all 4 years or 5 years of a college education for your child, because this is, again, an important factor. Um, you know, it's like, winning the lottery, you can't count on it. So you've got to make sure that you know what kind of money you have from the start to the end for an education. Okay. Um, all right. As I said, the FAFSA applications, it's opening July 1. As long as you've got your income taxes done, you can fill it out. The CSF application opens October 1. The soonest you can get this done, the better off you're going to be. And again, if your child is applying to a school early decision, CSS is required, has to be done by November 1st. So if I was sitting in having a child that was walking into a college in 2025, I would get these forms filled out as soon as possible. Um, uh, Again, deadlines vary. As the slide says, get it all done. Check the admitted student portals, stay on top of deadlines, be aware of loans if you're getting loans and what those when the loans, like if you're taking out a personal loan, I've seen some of the loans offer, deferred interest rates and all of those things. So you just need to understand, what, like paying any bill, you need to understand what the bill is before going into debt. So, and as I said, if you don't fill out the FAFSA, the CSS, and your child is going to college, they'll want that money up front August 1 before your child even walks through the door, starts classes. So just make sure. And I will tell you that just so you know that if you change your mind and they've already got your child selected in there, and your child says, no, I don't want to come, but they've already committed to the school, especially for early decision, you need to make sure of what kind of money you're going to get back. So things to think about in the long run and hopefully none of this will happen. But again, there's a lot of ifs when you start this college process. This is just one piece of it, one small piece. And the financial part is parent driven. So that's why I make sure that when I work with kids, that their parents are on board and know what the financial situation is before we start filling out 15, 20 applications. So just my opinion, but it does make a huge difference. All right. Scholarships. I've kept saying, scholarships are free. The student has put in a lot of work. I will tell you again, I have not had a scholarship that is not required an essay, nonetheless it's a scholarship that millions and millions and millions of children apply to, like the Coca-Cola scholarship or the Kohl's scholarship, that they literally write their name in and put their name in. It's kind of like paying for a lottery ticket, because the odds of getting that are 1 in a million. So they take work. They're you have to, first of all, you have to search for them. So every college is different. Where you find them on their website, it's a little different. Sometimes you really have to dig. Sometimes the student will apply to the college, and then the college will come back and say, you are eligible for this scholarship. Fill out this application and write this essay, which the student had no idea that they were eligible for, nor could I have told you, or anyone could have told you until your child submitted that application. So I've seen that happen over and over and over again. And that, if they're invited to apply for scholarships, absolutely, they should be filling out that application and that essay and going for the interview. Some of them are drawn out. The Jefferson Scholarship for the University of Virginia, the students are nominated. They go through an entire process. It's a lot of work, and then you don't hear until literally a month before you have to make a decision. So whether they're going there and they're not, and it's very selective. So these are scholarships that a lot of schools offer, but you have to find them. There's a lot of scholarship uh, again, search sites that are like you go in and put your name in and it's a search engine. And a lot of the search engines are repeat search engines and they all say the same exact thing. So does it hurt to put your child into a search engine or yourself into a search engine? No, it doesn't. It just means you're going to get an enormous amount of emails over and over and over and over again. So search engines are great, but search engines can also be intimidating because the amount of emails they're going to get. When I work with a student in advance, I try to tell the students to have a college email account, just strictly a Gmail or an AOL account. I don't think AOL is around anymore, but a Yahoo account or whatever they have, to have one strictly for college. They give that email out to a college. It's the only one that's going to be emailing them that. Same thing for scholarships. That's the only emails that they're going to get on that Gmail account. That I just find that the kids get so many emails because they sign up for so many things on an application and then they're bombarded and then things get lost and colleges will be sending them an email and they don't know it was there because they just don't look. So I find that that's helpful, or a parent make a separate email account for just college things. But I just find that the more dedicated you are to reading email regarding college information, the better off everyone's going to be. Something won't be lost. That's just a tip that I give my students. Sometimes the students do it and sometimes they don't, but it's just a suggestion. And again, same thing as Jeremy said, he did a lot of research. I like this parents to be very involved with this research. Children don't like it. You will hear a lot of kickback from your child going, I can do this. I know what I'm looking for. Or you don't know anything, mom and dad. I know everything. And you're going to hear that over and over and over again. Again, some of those things, if you have a counselor, you can shove it off to the counselor and say, hey, you deal with this, but you're going to hear this. And it is a family decision. And that's what it comes down to. I don't think any parent should be writing essays for scholarships. I'm not saying to do that. I'm just saying that there's a lot to be done and it's a family decision, especially if you're going to be involved with financial obligations to the schools. Let's see here. Oh, okay. And I apologize for not grabbing onto this piece, but so there are a lot of colleges that have different schools. So, like, for example, the University of Maryland has the Smith School of Business and the Clark School of Engineering, and a lot of colleges have specific schools within the large university. And those schools have independent scholarships. So, again, one of those things to look for. I will also tell you, mom and dad, that there's a lot of scholarship money once your child goes to the school. I'll give you a great example. My daughter went to a private school, a small school, and she wanted to study abroad. And I had not put the money aside for her to study abroad. So I said to her, you need to get a scholarship or a grant from the school to do this. Of course, I got a lot of kickback. I'm giving you some personal information. I got a lot of kickback from my daughter. However, that was the way it was. She was not going. Come to find out there were 3 scholarships offered to students that wanted to study abroad through the program that she was in. So she was able to study abroad, and airline, everything was paid for. We paid $500 for her to study in Turkey and Greece. So that was a great opportunity. But there's a lot of money once you get to the school, because a lot of donations from donors put into scholarships. However, those scholarships aren't available to freshmen walking into the school. They're only available for sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So when you walk around these schools, look at the bulletin boards and see what scholarships are there for certain things. There could be a talent scholarship that your child could apply for, but there's a lot of scholarships that go unclaimed because the kids don't know and the kids don't apply. So, and this goes again, scholarships are available to a lot of kids, even when they're sophomores, juniors, and seniors. They don't stop. And that's why a lot of scholarships will tell you the money's still there, and it goes untapped, and that's because the kids don't apply. And they don't apply, same reason why mine didn't, is because she was like, well, I'm taking the loans out and you're paying, and I don't need a scholarship. Well, the more scholarships the child can get while they're in college reduces their debt load, and it also reduces your debt load. So watch for those scholarships. Even when you're there on parent weekend, again, scan the bulletin boards and look for them, and keep after your child. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's not. But again, there's a lot of scholarships there that you need to look at. Another thing that some things that, like, employers, there are lots of employers out there that offer students scholarships, especially in the Washington, D.C. area. So I know NIH offers students, parents scholarships when their students, when they have students going into college. So find out. There's I don't know them all, so I don't want to sit here and name them all off. But if you ask it for your work, if they have scholarships offered, I would tap into that as well. Most of those scholarships are going to be based on extracurriculars, uh, community service hours. That's a huge one. There are a lot of scholarships out there for that. So I would contact your employer. Other scholarships are for Boy Scouts if they're an Eagle Scout, Girl Scouts if they have their gold. There's a lot of different scholarships out there. Community service, again, is a huge one. Montgomery County Public Schools offer scholarships. There are lots of banks out there that offer scholarships. Even automobile insurances like Allstate and State Farm, they offer scholarships. So the more research you can do now, and even if your child over the summer wants to start doing essays, again, the majority of these scholarships, unless they're, put your name in a hat, are going to require something. So make sure, local Lions clubs and all, again, Chamber of Commerce and a lot of places offer, and they may only be like $500 or $1,000, but they add up. So, and a lot of times if a student has written a scholarship essay about what they want to do and why they're passionate about it, a lot of times they could use that same essay for another scholarship. So it's important for them to think that way. Like sometimes, again, you can use same thing with college applications, and some scholarships, or excuse me, some essays you can overlap. But I will tell you the majority of the scholarship applications essays are pretty much what you want to do and why. So just a few things to start looking at now, especially if your child's going to be a senior next year, and start looking at scholarships that are offered. Oh, yep, that's another one. And thank you, Jeremy, for putting this on there. So another thing that you need to make sure is, and again, this happened to this did not happen to my daughter because it was not based on grades. However, I've seen it happen in the past. So I had a student that received 5 or 6 different scholarships from different organizations, and the school had come back and given them a scholarship. Well, when they walked in with 5 different scholarships that added up to almost, I think it was almost $12,000, the school took away the scholarships that they offered, because they had already had this $12,000 scholarship. So again, that's something you're not going to know unless you ask the financial aid office, because the representatives, the admission representatives that talk to your child and you talk to them, they're not going to know that because they're not financial aid people. I see Jeremy shaking his head, right? They're not. They're selling their school, and that's their job, is to sell their school and sell the child to apply, because it costs $75 to $100 for a student to apply to that school, and their job is to sell the school, sell the student that school, so they get that application fee. The people that know how much it costs and what factors into financial aid are the bursar's office and the financial aid office. So those are the people you want to talk to. And those are the people that will say, and you can say, use that term, do you allow stacking of scholarships? So good thing to know. One thing that is helpful is if you have a scholarship that is paid directly to the student, that's a plus. So a lot of those scholarships that are offered by the school, by the PTSA, or by a local Lions Club or whatever, they will literally write your child a check. Or they will pay for their books, or they will do that type of thing. And that way it doesn't come off of the scholarship that the college may have offered. So always look for those. And again, they may only be $250 or $500, but they add up. And especially if, again, they're going to be used for specific areas. But make sure that you ask that question, because this was something that I, as a parent, years ago did not know, when I started out 30 years ago, and I had no idea that they did this until I worked with a family that the child got an enormous amount of scholarships, both by the college and by the college and by private. And we were thinking, oh my gosh, you won't even have to pay for college. This is phenomenal. And then it came out that the actual school took it all away. So it was very disappointing. It just was a low blow to this family. And from then on, I was saying, you better make sure that this doesn't happen. So questions to ask: the more questions you ask that financial aid officer, the better prepared you're going to be when your child puts down a deposit and says they're going to attend the school. And again, this is a final, and I've told families, I tell children all the time, it depends upon the bottom line. You could fall in love with the school, but at the end of the day, and come May 1st, it depends upon the bottom line. So you need to make your child aware of that. Unless, again, and there are families that will never have to worry about that, and that's wonderful. I always tell families, everybody laughs at me, but I tell them, play the lottery, for 365 days a year. Pay a dollar, pay the lottery. You just never know. That's probably my last tip of the day. You just never know. And what did it cost you $1 a day? So, because you could be one of those millions that win it. That's what I always say to myself. You never know. I think that's probably it. About, we're on the slides, Jeremy. There you go. Okay. One other thing I want to tell you about this FAFSA, and this personally happened to me. My financial situation changed in the middle of my daughter going to college. And I had gone through a divorce, and our financial situation drastically changed, from 2 incomes down to 1. I was very fortunate that we filled out the FAFSA, because I was able to go back to the college and tell them that the income has drastically changed. They worked with us and made sure that Courtney wasn't, that she was given grant money instead of loan money to help su- supplement supplement the amount of money we paid. So you just don't know. I don't want to say that's going to happen, but again, we can't predict the future. We don't know, and you always want to have that FAFSA completed because things could change. The FAFSA has gotten so easy. When my daughter and son, we had to fill out the FAFSA for them, I will tell you, it took at least an hour. And I was thankful that my child didn't apply to a school that required the CSS profile, but the FAFSA was work enough. And now it's changed so much, and it doesn't take very much time at all. So apply. You have nothing to lose, everything to gain. Yes, the FAFSA ID, your child needs a FAFSA ID and the parent needs a FAFSA ID. And the class of 2025, you can set up that FAFSA ID now. Make sure you keep that information and you have that ID, you know, locked in somewhere, because it's not real easy if you forget them. So make sure that you write that FAFSA ID number down, because again, it comes from the government. So that's another thing I will tell you, that if you forget them, you got to answer a lot of questions to get a new one. So get them, put them on file, make sure you can, get to that information again. Unlike my daughter, who we, she could never remember a FAFSA ID number. I just ended up doing all the forms myself because it eliminated a lot of headaches. So, word to the wise. And again, I've probably told you too much information, but I like to tell everybody everything. So just if you need to, make sure you put it in a safe place so you can get to that FAFSA ID number again. But the more you can do in advance regarding financial aid, the better off you're going to be. And again, I said, my last quote was, comes down to the final number, compare the letters, look at all the information, look at all the fees, make sure you know everything before you sign that dotted line. And again, the school aid offices, they are very, very helpful. I can't even begin to tell you how helpful they are. They want to help you. That's what they're there for. Their goal is to help you. So again, I, you know, I was a college reader. I read applications for Clemson, and I will tell you that I knew nothing about financial aid for that school. So if a parent asked me, I'd say, yes, we do. We, fill out the FAFSA form, do this, do that. But if you would have asked me how much the fees were, I never would have known, because it wasn't my job. So a lot of these college representatives, again, they're not going to know. So your best bet as a parent is to pick that phone up and call those financial aid officers or directors. They will help you. And don't hesitate. Like I said, they're happy to help you. If they're not, then find somebody that will. But I haven't met a school that has not been happy to help, especially when it's, questions. And even here's the other thing, the CSS cost you money to fill out, and they're also very helpful. So if you have to fill that CSS form out, I would also contact them, because they have a whole department that takes care of that. And they're very helpful to tell you how to complete a form and what is needed and how to do it. So, use every resource you can, because they are available. All right. Do we have any questions?
Hi, Linda. I have a question.
Sure.
Second, just turn on my Zoom so you can see a live face. Good evening. Thanks so much for the talk. It was very helpful. I just had two quick questions. The deadlines, well, first of all, do you fill out the FAFSA and the CSS every year? Do those
Yes.
get filled out every year? Okay, so those have to
Every
get filled
year.
out every year, but scholarships and other things outside of those may not necessarily be every year. It might just be in the beginning when you're kind of factoring in all the
Right.
finances.
And
Okay.
here's another thing that I will tell you, just to go into a little bit more detail. When your child is offered a scholarship, when you receive the package and they're saying they've been awarded the McKnight, scholarship for $5,000 or whatever it is, you need to know what those terms are, because
Mhm.
some of them are based on GPA. So if it comes back and says, they're offered the McKnight scholarship, but your child has to maintain a 3.5 GPA, or they don't get the money, well, that may not be so great if your child doesn't do that well. So I don't want to say there's catches, but sometimes there are.
Okay.
So I've also had that happen. So when you get a scholarship, you need to make sure you understand what the terms are.
Okay.
So, and some of them don't have any. Some of them are strictly like, nope, we're going to give you the money. This is great. Some of them are going to have terms. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And then the
Okay.
other question I just had is when you had the deadlines for I think it was for the FAFSA being July and then the CSS in October, is that going to be your student's senior year that you're
So
starting to fill those?
the FAFSA, you can start filling it out in July. Every
Of
school is going to
which
have their
of
own
which
deadline.
of which year of your student? Like what is it,
Oh,
senior
yes.
year? Yeah.
So senior, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So if your child's graduating in 2025, yes, in July of 2024, you can start filling out that FAFSA form. If it's not, then you got a whole nother year to wait.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, any other questions?
Linda, I have
All
one
right,
question though, that's just a little bit of an aside. Is it okay for me to ask? It's
sure,
a little
absolutely.
bit not a little bit off the track of finances, but my daughter is going to be applying. She's 2025 graduate and she wants to be a business major, marketing, something like that, right? And so a couple of the schools that she's applying to, when I was doing some research, you don't automatically get into the business school. You have to like earn your way in. And so like one of the schools was
Mhm.
UGA. And when I called them, they're like, oh, well, it's very, very hard to get into that Terry School of Business. I was like, they were very discouraging. I'm like, well, I don't want to chance that. She might not even do well. Like, so then I'm starting to think maybe I shouldn't have her apply to these colleges because like, what if she really wants to be like a marketing major, but then she doesn't do well and doesn't get into these business schools?
So that you're right, that's a question, and I am happy to have a consultation with you about colleges and how to look and what to look for and the questions to ask. But that would be something that we can set up a one-on-one.
Okay, maybe we will, because like that scared me when I called them.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, great, now she's at this college and she can't even get into the school.
Well, not only does it scare you, but think about what it does to your daughter. She's like, well, I just give up all the way, right? So there are definitely factors to think about, and
Okay,
I'm
that's
happy to
probably
help you
another
with that.
conversation. I know it's not about finances, but we're trying to get our list together too of schools to apply. And in addition to finances, that's also something that I want to consider. But maybe I can
Right.
email you for like a side consultation on about that.
Happy to help. Happy to help.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Thank
So
you.
they're not, I don't know why they discourage families from the get-go that says, oh, it's really hard, but some schools do. And I beyond, and it depends on who you talk to. If you call the office and you get a college student, they're going to tell you anything and everything. But when you talk to a actual representative and have been with the school and they know what's going on, they'll really give you the information. But again, there are pros and cons for both ways, and a conversation you and I can have, one-on-one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. anything else. And if you have any questions afterwards, and you think about it like, oh, I forgot to ask this, Jeremy and my email are at the end of this information slide right there. And again, you can call, you can email us, whatever you want to do. We're available here. That's, what Everest does. We want to be a support to families. So if you want to reach out to us, if we're here to help you, and that's our goal. I love what I do. I know Jeremy and Ann love what they do, and they're very good at it. And but I've been doing this for years and working with Everest for years, so it's something that that's my passion, is to help people. And if you have a question, I'm happy to answer it. So, or have a meeting or whatever you'd like. We do offer a 30-minute consultation at no charge. So,
Linda, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Yeah. So I was wondering, is there a website that kind of compares schools in terms of the list price, or if you can fill in information like, what the net price would be, but it's, one website with all of the schools information.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you that one, but I don't know of any list out there that does that. I haven't. Yeah, in all of my years, I've never come across that kind of list. A lot of families make spread charts and spreadsheets and, put in the information, but they strictly go by, some people use books for it. I tend to say don't use a book. You need to use the website, their actual website, but you also need to factor in that website that you're looking at is giving you last year's price.
Yes.
So that's a whole nother thing that you need to factor in. So when you go to visit schools, you definitely want to ask them, what's the price increase? I see the numbers on your website are XYZ. What's the price increase for 2025? Some of the people will know and some of them won't know, but the numbers you're looking at on their website are definitely going to be different for 2025. Yeah. And definitely in a book, because the books are 2 years behind. So I wouldn't go by that either. But yes, right. I don't know of a list out there that compares them. I wish there was, but I have to be honest with you. I don't think there would be a company out there that would do it, because the colleges would be screaming. Because they wouldn't want to list.
They don't like competition. They don't like to be compared. Yeah.
Nope. They don't like it at all. Unless they have, no, they wouldn't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a good to-do list for this summer for a junior, that it's going to be a senior in the fall, is financially wise, is to do this action where you look at net prices for these different colleges, and and also then as July come around, you make the parents fill in the FAFSA form. So that sounds like the right idea.
But again, I would sit down and look at your finances, and then sit down and talk with your child and say, this is how much we can afford. So we're not paying $100,000 a year for you to go to school. So, because I'm going to be blunt, mom and dad, the price tag could say $50,000, but I will tell you, it costs a lot more than that, because again, you got to factor in transportation. You've got to factor in, they want to join XYZ, or they want to go on a certain trip, or they want to do all these things. So I will tell you that or all the extras, like, not just room and board. I mean, my daughter had, 3 meal plans a day, and I still was shelling out an extra $100 a week or $75 a week. So all those little things that you have to factor in that nobody ever tells you about. So that's why you really have to have that money talk. And I did. I sat down because I knew, and I sat down and said, this is it. This is what you're getting. Nothing more, nothing less. This is what you're getting. And if you choose to go to a school that costs above that amount, you're taking out the loans, not me. So, or not my husband or whatever. So it was a hard talk to have with her. But at the end of the day, it really was the only way to do it. So that's, to me, that's what you need to do now before you start even going to look at schools. Because again, I've had families do this. They have no idea what the financial situations are. They go, they look at a school, their child falls in love with the school. This is it. I want to apply to the school. You're on board. You love the school. Everything was phenomenal. They get into the school, and then you sit down and do the financials. And then you look at your daughter or your son and you say, I'm sorry, you can't go. Not unless you want to take out a loan for $40,000 a year. And that's a lot to ask of a child to do that. Again, my daughter did, but I will tell you, I don't recommend it. So I would never, ever recommend a child to go into that much debt. I've talked to families and said, I really don't recommend this whatsoever for that child to go into that much debt a year, because by the time they get out of college and not knowing what kind of situation the economy is going to be in, and your child's walking out of school with $10,000 a year worth of debt, they're starting a job, their career at age 23, and they're already $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 into debt just because they wanted to go to a name brand school. So again, a very hard talk to have, but a very important talk to have before you go visit tons of schools that are way out of everybody's price range. So I would, if it was me and I was sitting in the situation again, I would be handling it a lot different than I did with my daughter. So I would have been putting the money down and saying, this is how much this loan is going to cost you at the end of this year. I don't think 18-year-olds understand the value of what money is, because we've paid for everything for their entire lives. So I don't think a lot of kids get it. I mean, even my daughter, when she was in college, she was like, well, I don't need that scholarship. You're paying. And I'm like, no, I'm not. You're taking the loan out. So, this benefits you just as much as it benefits both of us. So again, I don't think they understand. I think it's a different generation. But only my opinion. And again, I have been doing this for many years, and I've seen children devastated just because at the end of the day, they applied to schools that parents couldn't afford, and then they didn't go anywhere. So I have seen that happen too. And that was a heartbreaker. That just was probably one of the worst times in my career at the high school I worked at. And this child applied to every Ivy League out there, schools in California. And at the end of the day, she got into 2 schools that she really wanted. Mom, dad said, sorry, can't go. I cried because, again, the work that child put into getting into these schools, and her mom and dad wouldn't let her take the loans out. And of course, she didn't want to really take the loans out. So it was a real disappointment. She ended up going to Montgomery Community College. So, which I'm sure, unfortunately, I didn't keep up with her, but it was definitely a hard time for her. She didn't even come to school for like 3 or 4 weeks because of the peer pressure that she received from all of her friends. So it was a sad situation. So I would have that talk now. My 2 cents. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. Again, I have my emails and Jeremy's email. If you're working with Ann, you have Ann's email, and happy to help you in any way we can. And thank you again. This presentation will be available. So if you want to listen to it again or look at the slides again, Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong. Are you going to post it, or what's going to happen with that?
Yep, we'll have it up online tomorrow, and I'll send an email to everybody with the link to the video, with the slides, and some supporting materials to help you guys out.
Okay. All right. Thank you again. Good night.
Thank you, Linda and
All right,
Jeremy.
thanks so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
You're
both.
welcome.
Good night.
You're welcome.
Good
Okay.
night.
Good night.